Welcome everyone to another edition of Drunk Agile, continuing the tradition from the previous two episodes. Nisha's where she is, Prateek's wearing what he's wearing, I'm wearing what I'm wearing. We're drinking the same stuff. So let's jump right into it. So we don't necessarily bore all of you with the details. The previous two episodes we were talking about why it's important to understand variation, that variation exists, how you can take your understanding of variation to minimize your chances of making two mistakes, and why that's important. We want to kind of extend it to, we're maybe taking a bit of a sidestep here, but want to reference things that we've talked about in the past to hopefully kind of bring this full circle. And this is the whole idea of like taking your data and fitting it to a specific distribution, or assuming a specific distribution for your data, and why that is, for lack of a better word, although I don't know that there is a better word, why fitting your data to a distribution is evil. It's just an evil thing to do. So, Prateek, can you help us out?
Yeah.
You can just go.
I'm guessing that for a lot of people, and this is exactly the way I would think about it if I heard these things. When you hear about variation, when you hear us talking about that different times of measuring the same thing can give you different results, your head immediately probably starts going towards things, statistical properties, things like averages and standard deviations, and figuring out, oh, if I've got 10 different things and they've given me 10 different results, I can just average this and that'll be a good enough guess. And if I want to understand even more, I can take the standard deviation and that'll give me a better idea. When you're doing that, again, refer back to flaw of averages episodes. You'll see all the reasons why we would suggest not doing that. But the second step of that, usually when people don't understand that that's already bad, the second step that they take from that is saying, oh, now that we know the average and standard deviation, we can just put this on a normal curve and get an idea of how this thing is behaving. Um, Guess what? there is almost no data set in the world is normal. And that's the big danger of what Dan was just talking about. That's why things are evil. Because well, that's not where the evil stops, right, Dan? It goes
Well,
beyond normal.
yeah, well, yeah, certainly, it's rare that a time series data will be normally distributed. Maybe we should say it like that way, because if we're talking about the weights of German shepherds, remember you talking about the weights of German
Yeah,
shepherds?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That might be normally distributed. Maybe,
Or maybe we talk about why that is not normal. I also, but yeah.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah.
But yeah. So and always, we're going to refer back to Dr. Wheeler on this stuff. Don't take our word for this. Go read what Dr. Wheeler has written on this. And for me, the fundamental point that Dr. Wheeler makes is, when you start using, and most people will run to the statistics that you're talking about, because that's what we've been taught, right? I mean, most of us have been taught normal distributions. Most of us have been taught averages and standard deviations. That's just what we've been taught. Turns out they're mathematical hacks, and I think we've talked about why they're mathematical hacks before. They're just shortcuts that don't really apply in the real world. But that's what people do. They'll run to these shortcuts just because that's what we know.
Yeah.
And what Wheeler would say is the fundamental assumption of all statistics that you've ever been taught, especially if you're talking about specific distributions like the normal distribution, the fundamental assumption that gets mentioned, but it's really glossed over, is that you are dealing with independent, identically distributed data, or IID data. And hopefully you've been listening to our previous two episodes, and what we've been trying to tell you is, while your data may be independent, although it's possible there is some autocorrelation going on there, while your data may be independent, there is a very good chance that it's not identically distributed. It's a very good chance that you've got lots and lots and lots of different things going on in your process, that if you take your data and you fit it to some distribution, you are breaking that fundamental assumption. Yeah, now you're bringing into play a whole bunch of stuff that quote unquote normal statistics was never ever designed to do. So the absolute first step in any type of data analysis is to understand, do we even have homogeneous data? Do we even have, or because if our data exhibits some of the special causes that Prateek was talking about in the last episode or the episode before, can't keep them straight in my head. If your data is exhibiting some of those causes, then guess what? Traditional statistics doesn't work anymore. It's completely broken. Throw it out the window. Forget about it.
Yeah, and we touched on this last time a little bit. Unfortunately, most agile practice kind of ignores that. That's why you end up with things like averaging the total story points delivered, and looking at average cycle time, or all those kind of things. That's where we take bad math and do worse math with it.
Yeah, I mean, I just had this horrific image of, how many times have you seen like a burn up chart that shows average velocity, story points, right? Not even throughput, but average velocity, and then plus or minus one standard deviation, and then they say that between the two standard deviations is 68%. You have a 68% chance of, right? There's so much bad math going on there. I don't even know how to.
Yeah,
I'm speechless. I don't know. You go.
But that's you talk to
You talk.
Do not assume that your data fits to any distribution. The good news, though, so far it's been the bad news. The bad news is these distributions that we love talking about don't represent most real data. The good news is you have your real data, and if you have your real data, you could do things to just use your real data to answer these questions, and to figure out, since we've been talking about variability, to actually figure out using your real data whether something is special cause or common cause and all that fun stuff.
I'm so glad you went there, because hopefully without naming names, I'm gonna try not to name names, but most people say, okay, great, I agree with you, Dan and Prateek. We can throw out the normal distribution. I agree. Our cycle time data is not normally distributed, but there's got to be some distribution out there that it's got to be a Weibull distribution, or Bible, or however you say it, or a Wakeby distribution, right? Right. So it's got to be some. Stop. I mean,
those are trigger words.
Stop the insanity, right? I mean, there is no distribution out there that generated your data.
Well, I mean, unless you chart it on a cubic spline, then
then maybe do some log normal transformation over to yeah. That there's no standard probability distribution that generates your data. Prateek just said, listen, this is one of the few times that I will say, listen to what he says. But listen to what Prateek said. Your process generated your data. A probability distribution did not generate your data. And that's actually good news, because we can take the real data that your process generated and start doing some of this analysis that we've been talking about without the hack of trying to fit it to any real curve.
Yeah, why? I mean, when you're using those distributions, essentially what you're doing is, I don't know if anyone's tried doing the Google Translate chain, where you put a word in Google, translate it to another language, translate it to another language, and then translate it back to the original language. That's what you're trying to do. You're taking reality, assuming that it fits a distribution, fitting it to that distribution, and then generating stuff from that distribution. Why wouldn't you just take reality and then go straight to reality?
Yep.
That's essentially what we're trying to say. Yeah.
So I'll try and bottom line it, and then maybe you wrap it up for us. So I think bottom line for us, when you hear words like standard deviation, when you hear words like Fibonacci, right? When you hear the cubic spline, right? When you hear those types of words, you have to know it's fake math, right? It's just it's a hack built on top of a hack built on top of a hack. It's whoever's saying that really probably doesn't, it sounds harsh, but they probably don't know what they're talking about. You know, they really don't, because our world does not fit those nice, neat models that people want it to fit. So those techniques don't apply in our world, right? Just don't apply. In future episodes, I know we keep saying this, but in future episodes, we'll explain what techniques you should be using, you know, as part of this analysis. But traditional curve fitting, you know, things like that, awesome. Last word, Prateek. Give us a last word.
Oh, I was just gonna say to listeners, we would love for someone to figure out why we keep referencing Kubik's climb. See how that's related to some very common agile stuff. That I don't think it will. I don't think the answer is going to surprise anyone when you figure that out. But yeah, feel free to go figure out why. Just a hint on that. It's very close to story points with decimal values. Yeah. So
Okay. I see Nisha twitching in the background. That's our signal.
Like, what?
That's our signal that we probably better stop. We've gone too far. But if hopefully all of this is making sense, by the way, the invitation is always there to leave us a comment, leave us a question. We'd love to hear from you. What have we said makes sense? More importantly, what have we said does not make sense? What do we need to spend a little bit more time on? How can we help you out as you're navigating your agile journey, hopefully with data? So with that, with Twitchy Nisha, with Prateek, for Prateek, my name is Daniel Vacanti. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you in the next episode.
Okay.